Welcome to Working Towards Our Purpose. This is episode 50, and today we're going to be talking about accepting support. But before we get into the episode, going to do a little check-in as has become regular on this podcast. So maybe you can check in with yourself and see how you're feeling right now whenever you're listening to this. For me, I went for a run this morning, which felt good. It was kind of hard. Still a little sore from the half marathon on Monday, but it felt good to get back out there. And then I'm also noticing a lot of resistance to this episode. I think I'm noticing that, talking about accepting support makes me a little uncomfortable, a little uneasy. And I noticed, like, as I was kind of like doing my routine to, get up to recording this episode, a lot of like doubt and a lot of just feeling like I didn't want to do it. So I'm leaning into that. And I think to get into the episode, I think this episode today is, like I said, all about accepting support and the support around you. And I think as much as I'm talking on a podcast about this, I'm also talking like right back to myself, because I noticed that I am very resistant to accepting support from around me. And as I'm just saying that, like, I think there is support all around us. There always is. And it's more so just a matter of like being able to see it and accept it and allow it into you. As I mentioned in the last episode 49, before I even get into that, episode 50, that's kind of a big deal, right? Like 50 podcast episodes. I did want to make a moment to think about that. I think 50 is a big number, especially in podcasting, and I can belittle it all I want, but I do want to take a second to acknowledge that, just feel it for a second, and that's what that was. So, maybe when we get to episode 100, we could do something a little bit more special, but still wanted to accept and acknowledge that 50 is like a big number. So, been doing this podcast for I think 2.5 years at this point, and it's changed shapes and forms, but we're at episode 50. So thanks for being along here with me. And okay. So now that that's through, getting back into support, and as I mentioned last episode on episode 49, I did I did a half marathon on Monday, my first one, and it was the first actual race I guess I've done. I've done a couple 5Ks, but they didn't really. This felt much different just in terms of the amount of people that were there supporting the runners. So it brought up this idea to me of accepting support around me. And so in the morning, before the race, you have to go down there and register, and you go to the tent, and there's tons of people around. It was overwhelming, the amount of people that were there for me. And I noticed myself getting sort of, I guess, uncomfortable. I kind of felt I was telling myself, why is this got to be such a big to do? We're just running. Why can't we just go do it? Why does it have to be this big thing? I have to register. I have to get this t-shirt. I have to, line up with everybody. They have to do all the ceremony and stuff. And I was finding myself getting annoyed by it, I think. And I think I was kind of annoyed because I just didn't want people watching me. I didn't want people to see what I was doing, which I think is a small version of not accepting support. And then once I started running and the race started, and I was a couple miles in, I started clearing my head a little bit because that's what running is for me. It's just a really good way to clear my head, to think through my thoughts and think through my feelings. And I think I was starting to see all of the people who were on the sidelines and cheering you on, even though you're random strangers, they're cheering you on. And then I was oh, okay. I was getting slightly annoyed at the beginning because it's this feeling that I don't like of like accepting support from others. And so, yeah, I guess I just been really thinking about that a lot. And it just brought up all these other different memories of like, where in my life have I not accepted support? And perhaps if I could have, maybe things would have went a little bit differently. Not in a regretful way, but more in a like, all right, well, maybe going forward, we can try to accept a little bit more support. So that kind of brings up the question to me, and I'm asking to you is like, when was the last time somebody like offered their support to you? Like, how many times have you done something or said what you were doing, and somebody's like, oh, I did that last week, or I did that last year, or I've had experience in that. Let me know if you ever need any help. And I don't know about you, but my first initial reaction is like, sure. And then I'll just be like to myself, yeah, I'm never gonna do that. And I almost feel like I'm not allowed to accept that. I almost feel like it's somebody just being nice. But if I were to say like, yes, help me with this thing now, then I'm now like giving them some obligation, when in reality, like they were the one that mentioned it. But I'm thinking that like I'm being a burden to them. So yeah, now that we're discussing it a little bit more, I think it goes further into like, yeah, that's funny now that I'm thinking about it. So really, at least for me, now that I'm noticing and accepting this, is that the acceptance of support, I think, goes back to just worthiness issues of, feeling like you're a burden to somebody. Like if somebody's going to help me, then that means that's like a blatant, oh, you're making somebody do something for you, therefore you're a burden. And being a burden just brings up the issues of worthiness, and like it's just all kind of like tied together for me in this like knot of unworthiness. And I think a lot of the topics that we talk about on this episode kind of tie into that. I know a lot of the things that I struggle with tie into that, is an issue of worthiness and not feeling like you're enough. So yeah, that's funny. I didn't even really expect to talk about that in this episode, but it kind of just came up. So yeah, it being sort of a worthiness issue. But anyways, where I was going with that was like, how many times have people offered their help or their advice or anything, and you just like didn't accept it or didn't cash in on that? Moving, great example. How many times have you gone to move and somebody's been like, oh, let me know if you need any help, but then you think in your head like, oh, I'm not going to ask them. I've done that so many times. And it kind of brings into this other idea. I was trying to think about like where this idea comes from, and I kind of just thought about the worthiness part of it. But before I came to that, I was thinking also like how it's a societal sort of thing of being sort of self-made. And I think a lot of people have pride in being self-made, and not that I'm saying that like that's a bad thing or to like villainize people that believe that, but I think that the idea of being self-made is basically a lie. Like I don't think nobody's self-made, and some people go through different things, and maybe it makes them feel like they're self-made or they did everything on their own or themselves. But the more you start to break down like, well, what does self-made mean? The more you realize that there's no such thing as being self-made. Like, the houses, the apartments we live in, did we build them? No, probably not. Most likely not. The food that we get, did we grow it? Probably not. So when you start to think about like, maybe you did build a business from scratch, but it's not like you were the only one that were there. Like you likely had a lot of people around you to support you, to get you started, to be a mentor, even just to exist as an example. I mean, nobody's self-made. And I think that the more that we can remove that sort of lie of being self-made or wanting to be self-made, then you can start to actually accept the help around you. So yeah, I don't know. It it is sort of a, like I said, a societal thing. And I think if we can sort of break down the idea of that and not look at it as like something to achieve or to strive for, then we don't have to feel like we have to do everything on our own. And it just kind of brings me to the idea of, trusting the universe. And this episode is going to be, I can tell it's already a little bit all over the place, but just bear with me. Maybe we'll get to a point at the end, but it's not going to be one of those 3-step ones. It's kind of just going to be one of those like exploring idea ones. So just as a warning, maybe, not that you need it, but anyways, the idea of like accepting and trusting in the universe. I remember when I first went to quit my corporate job, I was having a conversation with somebody. I can't remember who it was, but they were telling me like, you're about to take a leap, you're about to jump. The universe has a way of catching you. Like, try not to take it too seriously. Try not to worry too much about it. You'll figure it out. Something will be there to support you. And I think a part of that is also being open to accepting the support that is around you. And, in order to trust the universe, like you actually have to feel that. You have to feel like there is support around you. And I don't know, sometimes I can think about like how that feels, like what does being supported feel like? And for some reason I just get this image of like being in the water and how like water, you're buoyant in water and like it's kind of supports you. Like, yeah, you got to tread water a little bit, but even if you float on your back, like in the ocean, like it's pretty effortless, but the ocean is kind of there to support you. I kind of almost think of it like that. You can almost think of the universe like that. And, depending on what you believe in and, whatnot, I think for me, that makes me feel a little bit easier as far as like the things that I want to try and like putting myself out there and thinking like, you know what, if I work on my end, if I tread water a little bit, the water is going to be there to support me and to keep me buoyant and to keep me above water, and not drowned. So I like to think of it like that, if that makes any sense. But also it brings me to this story that I heard somewhere in a book, and I can't remember where it's from again. But anyways, there's this guy, and he's, it's like sort of an analogy. He's like, there's a hurricane coming and he doesn't want to leave his house, because he keeps saying like, God's going to save me, so I don't have to worry about this weather. And everybody evacuates and he's still in his house, and like the water's getting higher and higher. And then like the cops come or something like that, and they're like, hey, you got to leave. The storm's getting worse. You can't stay here. And he's like, no, God's going to save me. And then I'm probably telling the story horribly anyways, but, and then like the water gets even higher. It's like above the doors. So like you can't even walk outside anymore. And then he's on his roof, and then they send a helicopter, and the helicopter's like, come on, bud, like you're going to die. You got to get in this helicopter. And he doesn't. And he says, no, God's going to save me. And then he ends up drowning and dying, and then going to heaven and like meeting God. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, I sent you so much help. Why didn't you accept any of that? And he didn't realize that like the help was in the form of other people like trying to save him. He was just like waiting for this like grand God or something. But I don't know. I always think that story is funny because I think that it's relatable in terms of like how often we don't take support around us or don't take the help that's around us. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I would like to start taking more help from around me. And even just in a little way, I think something that I thought about recently was, this is like kind of a silly example, but like I recently started a Instagram account for Working Towards Our Purpose. So if you're on Instagram and you would like to, you can go follow me. But like I always kind of villainize social media, and I didn't, there's a lot of negatives for it for me, but there's also some positives to it. And I think like in a silly way, like a follow on social media or like sharing something on social media is a little tiny way that somebody can like help support you. But if you're like not willing to accept that support, you know, it for me, it shows up like, well, I don't even want to share it because like I don't like the platform, and you know, there's negative aspects to the platform. But if I'm believing in what I'm saying and what I'm creating, like in this podcast, like wouldn't I want to share that more with people that can go find it? And like, yeah, it just seems silly to like not put it out there, at least in a way that people can like find it and connect with it, and support it. So yeah, I think like, you know, if I think back on like my business, my Pleasant Podcast business, which I don't really have anymore, the amount of times where like I didn't say what I was doing, or I like kept it hidden, you know, if I talked about it more with people, or if I, you know, just said what I was doing, or, you know, sold myself a little bit more, how could I have found like support around me to make that happen? And, you know, again, like I don't regret any of that. I think it was all a learning lesson. But now that I'm in this stage of like believing in this podcast and really wanting to put everything I have into it, now it's like, okay, well, how can I ask for support, you know? And that even feels weird for me saying it. Like I still notice a resistance. But, you know, I think you have to practice at it. Like I have to practice doing it. I have to, you know, a little thing here, a little thing there. Yeah. And I think the world would look a lot different if we both accepted the support from others and also just kind of like gave it a little bit more. I think we could exist in, I don't know, maybe a little easier or something. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I think, yeah, to kind of conclude and to wrap this up, like, is there an area in your life where you can ask for some more support? Like maybe you want to try something new, but you don't really know where to get started. Or maybe you want to start a business. Maybe you have somebody who you look up to, who you can ask to be your mentor. Like, man, that's like the ultimate, like accepting support from somebody. I've never asked anybody to be my mentor, but I know that people do that. And I know that mentors change people's lives for the better. And like, there was an episode of this podcast I recorded, one of the last interview episodes. My friend Phil, who's a plumber, he had a mentor who greatly helped him with his plumbing business. And yeah, just what would it look like for you to like accept support in an area of your life? So if there's any takeaway from this podcast, this episode, where can you look for that area of accepting support, and how would your life look a little bit differently if you did accept that support? So yeah, that's kind of the one takeaway today, and kind of all I got for you today. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it wasn't too all over the place, but we got through it, and hopefully it was helpful. So I will see you on another episode real soon. As always, thank you so much for listening, and take care.